The alarm screamed through the halls of the Concordance, a massive ship that traveled between stars carrying diplomats and soldiers from dozens of different species. Commander Sergeant Elena Reyes was in the training room when the sound cut through everything else. She didn't hesitate. Her boots hit the floor running before the announcement even finished. All rescue personnel to Bay 3. Colonial distress signal. Immediate response required. Elena reached the bay in 4 minutes. Her team was already gathering, 6 soldiers total, including 2 Velkari officers. The Velkari looked like large cats that walked on 2 legs, covered in sleek fur with sharp amber eyes. They moved with deadly grace, and everyone knew they were fierce warriors. Captain Threxus nodded at Elena as she arrived. He was tall, his dark gray fur marked with the scars of many battles. "Colony ship Winter's Grace," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "Life support failure. Unknown survivors." The briefing was short. They had 20 minutes to reach the failing ship before its orbit decayed into a nearby moon. Elena checked her equipment twice: emergency rations, medical supplies, breathing apparatus, plasma cutter. Everything had to be perfect. Lives depended on it. The rescue shuttle launched hard and fast. Elena sat strapped in her seat, watching the stars blur past the viewport. She had done this before. Rescue missions were part of her job. But something felt different this time. The distress call had been weak, desperate. Whoever sent it was running out of time. "Approaching Winter's Grace now," the pilot announced. "Warning, ship is breaking apart. Multiple hull breaches. This is bad." Through the viewport, Elena saw the colony ship. It was dying. Pieces of metal floated away from the main hull. Lights flickered and went dark. Somewhere inside that broken vessel, people needed help. The shuttle docked hard against an intact airlock. The team moved fast, checking seals and pressures. When the door finally opened, cold air rushed out, filled with the smell of burned circuits and something worse: death. "Spread out," Captain Threxes ordered. "Find survivors. 20-minute sweep, then we extract." Elena moved through the dark corridors with her light cutting through the shadows. She found bodies, adult Velkari, frozen or suffocated when the life support failed. Each one was someone's family member, someone's friend. She marked their locations for later recovery but kept moving. The living needed her more than the dead. Then she heard it. A small sound, almost like crying. Elena ran toward the noise, her heart pounding. She turned a corner and found a sealed door marked with Velkari symbols. Through the small window she could see movement. She pressed her face to the glass and felt her breath catch. Children. 12 small Velkari cubs huddled together in an environmental pod. Their fur was matted, their eyes wide with fear. The youngest looked no more than 3 years old in human terms. They stared at her through the glass, and Elena saw the hope spark in their faces. "I've got survivors," she called into her comm. "Section 7, emergency pod. 12 juveniles. I'm bringing them out." The door mechanism was damaged. Elena used her plasma cutter, working carefully to avoid damaging the environmental seal. Sparks flew as she cut through the metal. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Lieutenant Varon, the other Velkari officer, arrived to help. "Cubs," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "They sealed themselves in when the adults died. Together they got the door open." The cubs stumbled out crying and reaching for them. Elena knelt down and let them surround her. They were so small, so scared. Their small hands grabbed at her uniform, and she felt the trembling in their tiny bodies. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're safe now. We've got you." That's when the second alarm started screaming. "Spatial anomaly detected," the pilot's voice came through, tight with stress. "It's expanding. We need to leave now." The team ran back to the shuttle, Elena carrying 2 of the smallest cubs while the others followed close behind. Captain Threxus brought up the rear, making sure no one was left behind. They barely made it through the airlock before the Winter's Grace gave a terrible groan of tearing metal. But as the shuttle pulled away, something went wrong. The anomaly, a tear in space itself, pulsed with energy. The shuttle's engines screamed as the pilot tried to compensate. Warning lights flooded the cabin with red. "We're caught in the gravity well," the pilot shouted. "I can't break free. We're being pulled back to the colony ship." The next few minutes were chaos. The pilot fought the controls while the team held on to anything secure. The cubs screamed in terror. Elena wrapped her arms around as many as she could, using her own body to shield them from being thrown around the cabin. When the shuttle finally stopped moving, they weren't safely away. They were crashed into one of the Winter's Grace's intact docking bays, and the shuttle's engines were completely dead. "Damage report," Captain Threxus demanded. The pilot's face was grim. "Main engines are fried. Communications array is gone. Life support in the shuttle will last maybe 6 hours. We're trapped." Elena felt the weight of those words. Trapped on a dying ship with 12 terrified children and no way to call for help. She looked down at the cubs pressed against her, their small bodies shaking with fear and cold. "The ship still has some intact sections," Lieutenant Varen said, checking his scanner. "We can move to a compartment with better life support, but supplies are a problem." Captain Threxus pulled out their rations, emergency food packs designed to keep a soldier going in crisis situations. He counted them twice, then looked at Elena with dark eyes. "We have 18 ration packs, 15 people total. The Concordance doesn't know we're in trouble. Standard protocol means they'll start searching when we don't report in. That's 24 hours minimum. Maybe longer if the anomaly is blocking their sensors." Elena did the math quickly. 18 packs, 15 people. At least a full day, maybe more. She looked at the cubs, saw how thin they already were from days trapped in that pod with no food. Then she looked at the 3 adults, herself, Threxis, and Varen, all trained soldiers, all capable of enduring hardship. "We need to move now," she said, standing up with a cub in each arm. "Find the best shelter we can and wait for rescue. We'll make the rations stretch." Captain Threxus nodded. "Agreed. Move out." As the team gathered the cubs and supplies, Elena took one last look at their broken shuttle. They were supposed to be the rescuers. Now they needed rescuing themselves, but she had faced worse before. She would keep these cubs alive, whatever it took. The group moved into the darkness of the broken ship, and behind them, the shuttle's lights finally died completely. The compartment they found was small but intact. Elena checked every seal twice before allowing the cubs inside. The room had been some kind of storage area, with metal shelves bolted to the walls and a single functioning light panel that cast everything in pale blue. It wasn't much, but it had working life support and a door that sealed properly. It would have to be enough. The cubs collapsed onto the floor, exhausted and scared. Elena counted them again, 12 total, ranging from what looked like 3 years old to maybe 7 in human terms. The littlest one, a female with cream-colored fur, wouldn't let go of Elena's hand. Her small fingers gripped tight as if Elena might disappear if she let go. "What are their names?" Elena asked Lieutenant Varen as she helped arrange the cubs into a corner where they could stay warm together. "Velkari cubs don't receive formal names until their 10th year, Varen explained. His amber eyes watched the children with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. "Until then, they are called by family designations. We cannot know these without accessing the ship's records." "Then we'll figure something out," Elena said. She looked at the small cream-colored cub still holding her hand. "You're the littlest. I'll call you Tiny for now. Is that okay?" The cub made a small chirping sound and pressed closer to Elena's leg. The other cubs watched with wide eyes. Elena could see they were on the edge of breaking down completely. She had seen trauma before in war zones. These cubs had watched their families die. They had been alone in the dark, waiting to die themselves, and now they were trapped again in another broken ship. She couldn't give them safety or a way home right now, but she could give them something else. "All right, everyone," Elena said, keeping her voice gentle but strong. "I know you're scared. I know this is terrible, but you're not alone anymore. We're going to stay right here together until help comes. And help will come, I promise." Captain Threxus was organizing their supplies in the corner. Elena watched him lay out the ration packs, 18 silver packages that represented the only food they had. He caught her eye and gestured for her to join him. She carefully untangled herself from Tiny and walked over. "We need to discuss rationing," Threxus said quietly. His voice was professional, but Elena could hear the strain underneath. "Standard emergency protocol is 1 pack per person per day. We have 18 packs and 15 mouths to feed. The Concordance will search for us, but with the spatial anomaly interfering with sensors, it could take 4 days, maybe longer." Elena looked at the ration packs, then back at the cubs. She could see their ribs through their fur. They had already been starving before the rescue attempt. "The cubs eat first," she said. "Full rations. We'll split what's left." Varen, who had been checking the environmental controls, turned sharply. "That's not logical. We are the adults. We need strength to protect them. Velkari protocol dictates the strong eat first to maintain their ability to defend the weak." "Good thing I'm human then," Elena said. She picked up 12 ration packs and carried them to the cubs. Because human protocol is different. The cubs eat first. Full portions. No arguments. Captain Threxus stood, his tail lashing with agitation. Sergeant Reyes, I must object. If you weaken yourself, you become a liability. Who will protect the cubs if you collapse from hunger? You will, Elena said simply. She started opening the ration packs, showing the cubs how to activate the heating elements. But look at them, Captain. They're already malnourished. Their bodies are still growing. They need food more than I do, more than any of us do. This is tactically unsound, Threxus argued, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Elena saw him watching the cubs as they began to eat, saw the way his expression softened just slightly. Maybe, Elena agreed. She took one ration pack for herself and split it into 3 portions, handing pieces to both Velkari officers. But it's right. That's what matters. They settled into an uneasy routine. The cubs ate while the 3 adults shared minimal portions. Elena made sure each cub finished their food, helping the smallest ones with the unfamiliar packaging. Tiny stayed pressed against her side the whole time, eating slowly while keeping one paw on Elena's knee. After the meal, the temperature in the compartment started to drop. The life support was functional but struggling. Elena felt the cold seeping through her uniform. The cubs felt it too. They huddled closer together, their small bodies shivering. The environmental system is failing, Varen reported, checking his scanner. We can maintain breathable air, but temperature regulation is degrading. It will reach approximately 4 degrees Celsius by morning. 4 degrees. That was dangerous. Especially for cubs who had already been through so much. Elena looked at her team's emergency supplies. They had 2 thermal blankets designed to reflect body heat. Not enough for everyone. Give the blankets to the cubs, Elena said. She was already pulling off her outer uniform jacket. The Velkari had thick fur, but these cubs were young and sick. They needed more help. She wrapped the thermal blankets around the group of cubs, tucking them in carefully. Then she lay down next to them, using her body as a windbreak against the cold air that leaked through the door seals. Tiny immediately crawled into her arms, and soon the other cubs pressed close, seeking her warmth. Captain Threxus watched this with his head tilted. You will freeze, Sergeant. I'll be fine, Elena said, though she could already feel the cold biting at her skin. I've been through survival training in worse conditions. Just need to keep the cubs warm. Through that first long night, Elena told the cubs stories. She told them about Earth, about oceans and forests they had never seen. She told them about other rescue missions with happy endings. She told them about her own childhood, about learning to be brave when she was scared. Her voice grew hoarse as the hours passed. But she kept talking because when she stopped, the cubs started crying again. By morning, Elena's body ached from the cold and from staying in one position all night. But the cubs had slept, and that was what mattered. When they woke, she had them do simple exercises to warm up, jumping jacks and running in place. It made them laugh, these strange human movements. The sound of their laughter in that cold metal room was the best thing Elena had heard in days. Breakfast was the same as dinner. Elena opened 12 ration packs for the cubs and split 1 pack 3 ways for the adults. Captain Threxus protested again, but more weakly this time. He was beginning to understand, Elena thought. Or at least he was choosing not to fight her. How long can you maintain this, Sergeant? Varen asked quietly as they watched the cubs eat. You are giving them your food, your warmth, your strength. What happens when you have nothing left to give? Elena met his eyes steadily. Then I give them hope instead. That's free. But it wasn't free, and she knew it. By the end of the second day, Elena could feel the effects of limited food. Her stomach cramped with hunger. Her thoughts moved a bit slower. Her hands shook slightly when she opened the ration packs for the cubs' dinner. Still, she smiled at them. She played simple games with them, teaching them hand-clapping rhymes from Earth. She checked each cub carefully, looking for signs of illness or injury. One of the older cubs, a male with dark stripes in his fur, had a deep cut on his leg that was showing signs of infection. Elena cleaned it with their limited medical supplies and wrapped it carefully. You're going to be okay, she told him. I've got you. That night was colder than the first. Elena wrapped herself around the cubs again, giving them every bit of warmth her body could provide. Tiny slept with her head tucked under Elena's chin, purring softly. The sound was like a cat's purr, and it made Elena's chest ache with protective fierceness. These weren't her species. They weren't even from the same planet. But they were children and they were hers now. She would keep them alive, no matter what it cost. Day 4 started badly. Elena woke from restless sleep feeling wrong. Her head pounded with a dull ache that sat behind her eyes. When she tried to sit up, the room tilted sideways and she had to grab the wall to steady herself. Her mouth tasted like metal, and her hands trembled as she checked on each sleeping cub. They were all still breathing, still alive. That was what mattered. Captain Threxus was already awake, keeping watch near the door. His sharp eyes tracked Elena's movements, and she saw his ears flatten against his head, a Velkari expression of concern. "You are unwell," he stated. "It wasn't a question. I'm fine," Elena lied. She pulled herself to her feet, using the wall for support. The motion made her dizzy, but she forced herself to stay upright. "Just need to get the cubs their breakfast." "Sergeant Reyes, I'm fine, Captain." But she wasn't fine, and they both knew it. Elena had been giving the cubs full rations while barely eating herself for 3.5 days. She had been using her body heat to keep them warm at night, sleeping maybe 2 or 3 hours total. She had been running on determination alone, and her body was starting to shut down. Still, she opened the ration packs for the cubs with shaking hands. She made sure each one ate properly, checking portions and making sure the youngest ones didn't spill. When they asked her to play games, she played. When Tiny wanted to be carried, Elena lifted her up despite the way it made her arms tremble. Lieutenant Varen approached her during the mid-morning rest period. His voice was quiet but firm. "You need to eat more. This is becoming dangerous." "The cubs need it more," Elena said. She was sitting against the wall, Tiny asleep in her lap. 3 other cubs were pressed against her side, seeking comfort. "Their bodies are growing. Mine isn't. Basic biology." "Basic biology also says that a starving adult cannot protect anyone," Varen countered. His tail lashed with frustration. "You are becoming weak. You are shaking. I can hear your stomach making distress sounds. This is not sustainable." "It doesn't need to be sustainable," Elena said. Her voice came out rougher than she intended. "It just needs to last until rescue comes. The Concordance will find us. They just need time. And if rescue takes longer than you can endure..." Elena looked down at Tiny's sleeping face, at the gentle rise and fall of her small chest. "Then I endure anyway. That's the job." By mid-afternoon, Elena's condition had worsened. She tried to hide it, but her body betrayed her. Simple tasks became difficult. Opening ration packs required intense concentration. She dropped things. Her vision blurred at the edges. Once, when standing up too quickly, the world went gray and she had to lean against the wall until it passed. The cubs noticed. They pressed closer to her, their small faces worried. The older male with the injured leg, Elena had started calling him Stripes, brought her his water ration. "For you," he said in careful standard, the common language used across species. His voice was high and uncertain. "You take care of us. We take care of you." Elena's eyes stung with tears. She didn't have the moisture in her body to actually cry. "Thank you, Stripes. But you drink it." "I'm okay." She wasn't okay. That evening, she could barely keep down the small portion of ration pack she forced herself to eat. Her body was rejecting the food, her stomach cramping and rebelling. She made it outside the compartment before being sick, not wanting the cubs to see. When she came back, wiping her mouth with her sleeve, both Velkari officers were waiting for her. "This ends now," Captain Threxus said. His voice carried command weight, the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "You will eat a full ration. That is an order, Sergeant." "With respect, Captain, you're not in my chain of command," Elena said. She was too tired to argue properly, but she wasn't going to back down. "The cubs eat first." "That's not negotiable." "You are being irrational," Varen snapped. "Look at yourself. You can barely stand. Your skin is wrong color. You are damaging your body." "My body can take it," Elena said. She moved past them, back to where the cubs were settling down for sleep. "I've been through survival training. I know my limits, and do you?" Threxus followed her. "Because from where I stand, you are past your limits. You are harming yourself for cubs that are not even your species. This makes no sense. In any culture I know, this is seen as foolish." Elena turned to face him. The movement made her sway, but she locked her knees and met his eyes. "Then maybe you don't know human culture very well. We don't abandon kids, ever, for any reason. I don't care if they're human or Velkari or any other species. They're children and they come first. That's not up for debate." Something changed in Threxus's expression. He stared at her for a long moment, his ears forward in the Velkari sign of intense focus. You would die for them. It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. If that's what it takes. That night was the worst yet. The temperature had dropped even further, and Elena's body had no reserves left to generate heat. She lay with the cubs pressed around her, shivering uncontrollably despite the thermal blankets. Her teeth chattered so hard her jaw ached, but she didn't move away from the cubs, didn't take any of their blankets for herself. Tiny woke up in the middle of the night and felt Elena shaking. The small cub made a distressed sound and tried to wrap her tiny arms around Elena, as if she could keep the human warm the way Elena had kept her warm. It's okay, baby, Elena whispered. Her voice barely worked, her throat raw and dry. Go back to sleep. I'm right here. But Tiny wouldn't sleep. She chirped and purred, pressing her small furry body against Elena's chest. One by one, the other cubs woke. They seemed to understand that something was wrong. They piled onto Elena, sharing their warmth, covering her with their small bodies. Cubs protect too, Stripe said firmly. You protect us. We protect you. Elena tried to tell them she was fine, but her voice wouldn't work anymore. She just held them and let their warmth seep into her frozen body. Above the pile of cubs, she saw Captain Threxis and Lieutenant Varen watching. The expressions on their feline faces were complicated. Confusion, concern, and something that might have been dawning understanding. Morning came too soon and too slow at the same time. Elena forced herself to move, to get up, to function. The cubs needed breakfast. That was all that mattered. She crawled to the supply pile because standing was impossible. Her hands were so weak she could barely open the ration packs, but she managed. 12 packs for 12 cubs. She watched each one eat with fierce satisfaction. Sergeant, Varen said softly. He knelt beside her. Please, just one full ration for me. You have proven your point. You have shown incredible dedication. But you must eat, Elena shook her head. The motion made her vision swim with black spots. Cubs first, she managed to say. Always. Why? Threxis demanded. He towered over her, his voice sharp with frustration and something that might have been fear. Explain to me why you do this. Make me understand why you sacrifice yourself for cubs that are not yours, not your blood, not even your species. Elena looked up at him. It took effort to focus on his face. Because they're children, she said simply. What else would I do? Then the world tilted. The floor rushed up to meet her and everything went dark. She woke to small paws patting her face and worried chirping sounds. The cubs crowded around her, their faces frightened. Varen was checking her pulse, his face grim. Threxis stood over them all, his tail rigid with tension. Heart rate is weak but steady, Varen reported. She's conscious again. Sergeant, can you hear me? Cubs okay? Elena mumbled. It was hard to form words. All 12? All 12 are fine, Threxis said. His voice was strange, rough with emotion Elena didn't understand. You collapsed. You are not fine. Don't matter, Elena whispered. She managed to lift one hand and touch Tiny's face. The small cub was crying. Cubs are okay. That's what matters. You are insane, Varen said, but his voice held something like wonder. Completely insane. No rational being does this, Elena smiled weakly. Not insane. Just human. Cubs first always. The sound of rescue came like thunder. The distant roar of engines shook the walls of their compartment, and every head turned toward the door. The cubs jumped to their feet, chirping with excitement and fear. Helena, still lying on the floor where she had collapsed, managed to lift her head. That's them, she whispered. The Concordance. They found us. Captain Threxis was already on his feet, moving to the door to signal their location. Within minutes, the rescue team burst through, bringing light and noise and hope. The team leader, a Saurian named Dr. Kesseth with scales that gleamed deep green under the lights, immediately took command. We need immediate medical assessment, Kesseth ordered, his reptilian eyes scanning the group. Get stretchers for anyone who can't walk. Set up a portable scanner. Move people, the next hour was chaos. Medical teams swarmed the compartment, checking each cub carefully. All 12 were dehydrated and underweight but alive. The injured cub, Stripes, was taken first, rushed to the Concordance's medical bay for treatment of his infected leg. The other cubs clung to Elena, refusing to leave her until the medical staff gently explained that everyone was going to the same place. Elena tried to stand, to walk on her own, but her legs wouldn't hold her weight. A medical officer caught her before she fell and guided her onto a stretcher. The world swam in and out of focus as they carried her through the broken corridors of the colony ship, back to the rescue shuttle, and finally onto the blessed stability of the Concordance. The medical bay was bright and clean and warm. Elena lay on a diagnostic bed while machines hummed around her, scanning and measuring and analyzing. Tiny refused to leave, holding Elena's hand with both of her small paws. The other cubs were in nearby beds, being examined by medical staff, but they kept looking over at Elena as if afraid she might disappear. Dr. Kesseth stood over Elena's bed. His vertical pupils narrowed as he read the data flowing across his handheld scanner. His expression grew more and more concerned as he studied the results. Severe dehydration, he muttered. Extreme malnutrition, electrolyte imbalance, signs of ketosis, muscle catabolism. This is significant. He looked down at Elena with a mixture of professional concern and personal confusion. Sergeant Reyes, when did you last eat a full meal? Elena had to think about it. Her mind felt foggy. Before the mission? 6 days ago? And during the rescue? How much did you eat? Some, Elena said vaguely. Enough, define enough. Elena didn't answer. She didn't need to. Tiny spoke up, her small voice clear in the quiet medical bay. She gave us food. All the food. She ate little pieces. Tiny pieces. We tried to share, but she said cubs eat first. Dr. Kesseth's scales rippled, a saurian sign of surprise. He looked from the cub to Elena and back again. You gave them your rations? They needed them more, Elena said. It seemed obvious to her. Why was everyone so confused about this? Doctor? One of the medical technicians called out, her voice sharp. You need to see these readings. The bone density scan. Dr. Kesseth moved to the main diagnostic console, his tail swishing with agitation. Elena watched him study the screen, saw his expression change from concerned to shocked. He pulled up more data, running additional scans. His clawed fingers moved quickly across the controls, bringing up image after image of Elena's internal systems. Get me a complete metabolic panel, he ordered. I want a full organ function analysis. And someone find Captain Threxus and Lieutenant Varon. They need to see this. 20 minutes later, both Velkari officers stood in the medical bay. They had been cleaned up, fed, and checked over. They looked healthy and strong. Elena, by comparison, looked like a ghost on the white sheets of the medical bed. Her skin was pale, her eyes hollow, her lips cracked and dry despite the IV fluids now dripping into her arm. Dr. Kesseth pulled up a holographic display that floated above Elena's bed. It showed a three-dimensional image of her body, with various systems highlighted in different colors. Red areas pulsed with warning indicators. I've been a doctor for 30 years, Kesseth began, his voice formal and clinical. I've seen many species under many conditions, but I have never seen anything quite like this. He pointed to the red areas on the display. Sergeant Reyes has been in a state of advanced starvation for approximately 4 days. Her body began breaking down its own muscle tissue for energy 3 days ago. Her bone density has decreased by almost 2%, normally a process that takes months, not days. Captain Threxus stared at the display, his ears flat against his head. That's possible? Under extreme conditions, apparently yes. But here's what's truly remarkable. Dr. Kesseth manipulated the display, zooming in on Elena's organs. The human body has an incredible ability to protect vital organs during starvation. It will sacrifice muscle, bone, even brain function to keep the heart and lungs working. But the sergeant here has pushed that process to an extreme degree. Look at these readings. He pointed to Elena's liver. Her liver has begun to show signs of stress. Her kidneys are operating at reduced efficiency. Her heart rhythm is irregular. According to my calculations, she was approximately 48 to 72 hours away from permanent organ damage. The room fell silent except for the beeping of medical equipment. Elena felt all eyes on her. She squeezed Tiny's paw gently, trying to reassure the frightened cub. Lieutenant Varon spoke first, his voice barely above a whisper. She knew. She knew exactly how far she could push her body. Of course she knew, Dr. Kesseth said. He looked at Elena with something like awe. Sergeant, you have extensive survival training, correct? You know the signs of starvation, the stages, the limits? Yes, Elena admitted. Her throat was raw, but talking was getting easier with the IV fluids, part of basic training for deep space rescue operations. We learn to recognize when our body is shutting down, So you deliberately brought yourself to the edge of death, Threxus said. It wasn't a question. His voice was flat, stunned. You calculated exactly how long you could survive on minimal rations while maintaining enough strength to protect the cubs. And then you executed that plan perfectly. I did what needed to be done, Elena said simply. The cubs were already malnourished. Growing bodies need more calories than adult bodies. It was basic math. Basic math, Varen repeated. He made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. She calls it basic math. She calculated her own death. Not death, Elena corrected. Just close to it. I knew rescue would come. I just needed to last long enough. And I did. Dr. Kesseth saved the scan data to his personal files. I'm going to recommend you for psychological evaluation, Sergeant. This level of self-sacrifice is not normal behavior for any species I know. It's normal for humans, Elena said. She looked at the cubs in their nearby beds, all 12 of them alive and safe. Tiny still held her hand, purring softly. We protect our pack, always, even if it costs us everything. Captain Threxus approached the bed. His movements were slow, almost reverent. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight Elena had never heard from him before. I questioned your decisions. I called you irrational. I said your actions made no sense. He placed one clawed hand over his chest in the Velkari gesture of deep respect. I was wrong. You are the most rational being I have ever met. You simply operate under a different calculation than any I have known. What calculation is that? Elena asked. That children matter more than adults. That the future matters more than the present. That some things are worth dying for. Threxus bowed his head. I have been a warrior for 20 years. I have fought in dozens of battles. I thought I understood sacrifice, but I never understood it like this. You chose to suffer so they wouldn't have to. Someone had to, Elena said. The medication was making her drowsy, pulling her toward sleep. And I was the best choice. Velkari need more calories than humans to maintain body temperature because of your higher metabolic rate. I could survive longer on less food. It was logical. You keep saying it was logical, Varen said softly. But logic doesn't make you lie on a cold floor all night to keep cubs warm when you're freezing. Logic doesn't make you tell stories when your voice is failing. Logic doesn't make you smile at frightened children when you're dying. That's not logic, Sergeant. That's something else. Something human. Elena's eyes were closing now, exhaustion finally claiming her. Maybe, but mostly. They're just kids. Someone had to take care of them. So I did. What else would I do? 3 days after the rescue, Dr. Kesseth called a meeting in the Concordance's main conference room. It was an unusual gathering. Medical staff, military officers, and representatives from the Velkari government who had arrived via fast courier ship to collect their rescued cubs. Captain Threxus and Lieutenant Varen sat at the main table, while Elena watched from a wheelchair near the back. She was still too weak to stand for long periods, though she was recovering well. The cubs were in the medical bay being monitored but healthy. They had asked for Elena constantly over the past 3 days, and she had spent every waking hour with them when the doctors allowed it. Even now, Tiny was technically supposed to be in bed rest, but she had escaped and was curled up in Elena's lap, refusing to leave. Dr. Kesseth stood at the head of the table, a holographic display floating in front of him. The image showed Elena's medical scans marked with detailed annotations and analysis. I've asked you all here because this case represents something significant, Dr. Kesseth began. Not just a successful rescue, but a demonstration of human capability that I believe deserves documentation and study. He gestured to the scans. These are the medical readings from Sergeant Elena Reyes, taken immediately after rescue. As you can see, she was in an advanced state of starvation, having deliberately restricted her food intake for 4 days while maintaining full rations for 12 Velkari cubs. Ambassador Trellix, a senior Velkari official with silver-gray fur and ceremonial clan markings, leaned forward. Her voice was measured and formal. Dr. Kesseth, I have read your preliminary report. I must confess I find the humans' actions difficult to understand. In Velkari culture, we believe the strong must maintain their strength to protect the weak. A weakened guardian cannot protect anyone. That is the logical conclusion for most species, Dr. Kesseth agreed, and it's why Sergeant Reyes's actions are so remarkable. She didn't just ignore that logic. She operated under a completely different framework. He pulled up new data. Let me explain what I've learned about human evolutionary biology and psychology. The display changed, showing an image of early humans hunting across an ancient landscape. Humans are persistence predators. Their ancestors would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. This gave humans an unusual relationship with physical suffering. They learned to push their bodies past normal limits to keep going when every instinct says to stop. "We know this," Threxes said. "Human endurance is well documented. But this was more than endurance. This was deliberate self-harm for the benefit of others." "Exactly," Dr. Kesseth said. "And that's where human pack bonding becomes relevant." He showed images of human families, human communities, humans working together. Humans evolved as social creatures who extended their protective instincts beyond their immediate genetic relations. They bonded with their tribe, their community, even their domestic animals. This bonding created a psychological drive that often overrides self-preservation. He pulled up Elena's brain scans. When Sergeant Reyes looked at those cubs, a different species with no genetic relationship to her, her brain chemistry showed patterns consistent with parental bonding. Specifically, elevated oxytocin and reduced activity in the brain regions associated with self-interest. In simple terms, her brain treated those cubs as if they were her own children. Ambassador Trellix's ears twitched forward with interest. "Her biology overrode her logic?" "No," Dr. Kesseth corrected. "Her logic was based on a different priority system. For most species, the priority is self-preservation first, then offspring, then pack, then strangers. For humans, especially humans in caretaker roles, the priority often inverts. Children first, regardless of relation. Pack second, self last." Lieutenant Varon spoke up, his voice thoughtful. "I watched her for 4 days. She never wavered, never complained, never asked for sympathy or recognition. She simply did what she believed needed to be done. Because to her there was no other choice," Dr. Kesseth said. "Look at this data from her post-rescue interview." He displayed Elena's own words on the screen. "They're children. What else would I do?" That phrase appears multiple times in her testimony, Dr. Kesseth continued. "She genuinely cannot conceive of another course of action. When faced with children in danger, her mind doesn't process options or weigh outcomes. It simply acts. Children must be protected. End of calculation." Ambassador Trellix stood pacing slowly around the table. Her tail moved in slow, thoughtful patterns. "I have read the complete report. Sergeant Reyes gave the cubs her food, her warmth, her strength. She slept perhaps 2 hours per night for 4 days. She told them stories to keep their spirits up when her own voice was failing. She played games with them when she could barely stand. When she collapsed, her first words upon waking were to ask if the cubs were safe." She paused at the viewport, looking out at the stars. "This is not the behavior of any species I know. It's the behavior of humans," Captain Threxes said quietly. He stood as well, moving to stand beside the ambassador. "I have fought alongside humans in combat. I have seen them take wounds meant for their squad mates. I have seen them carry injured soldiers for kilometers when they themselves could barely walk. I thought I understood human courage, but I didn't. Not until I watched Sergeant Reyes." He turned to face the room, his expression solemn. "She didn't just save those cubs. She chose to suffer so they wouldn't have to. That's not courage. That's not even sacrifice. I don't have a word in my language for what that is." "Love," Elena said softly from her wheelchair. All heads turned to her. She shrugged, making tiny shift in her lap. "You're all talking like I did something complex. But it's simple. You protect the ones you love. And I loved those kids the moment I saw them scared and alone in that pod." Ambassador Trellix approached Elena's wheelchair, studying her intently. "You had known them for mere minutes when you made your decision?" "Didn't need longer than that," Elena said. She stroked Tiny's fur gently. "They were kids who needed help. That's all that mattered." The ambassador knelt down so she was at eye level with Elena. It was a significant gesture. Velkari officials did not kneel for anyone except royalty. "Sergeant Reyes, the 12 cubs you saved are the children of colony leaders, scientists, and military officers. 6 different family clans. Because of your actions, our colony's future survives. You have given us back our children." "Just did my job," Elena said, uncomfortable with the formal attention. "No." The ambassador's voice was firm. "You did far more than your job. You gave pieces of yourself, your strength, your health, your future well-being, to save cubs that were not yours. In Velkari culture, there is no higher honor than preserving another's lineage. You preserved 6 lineages at great cost to yourself. She stood and pulled something from her robes, a small crystal pendant on a silver chain. The crystal caught the light, refracting it into rainbow patterns. This is the Star of Preservation, our highest civilian honor. It has been awarded only 14 times in our history, and never to a non-Velkari. But there is no question you have earned it. Elena stared at the crystal, shocked. Ambassador, I can't. You can and you will, the ambassador said firmly, placing the pendant in Elena's hand. You will wear it so that every Velkari who sees it knows what you did. You will wear it so that the cubs you saved can show their children and their children's children the proof that a human loved them enough to die for them. I didn't die, Elena pointed out weakly. You were willing to, Threxus said. That's what matters. You went to the edge knowing you might not come back. That's the definition of sacrifice. Dr. Kesseth pulled up one final image, a picture of Elena surrounded by all 12 cubs, taken in the medical bay 2 days ago. The cubs were piled around her, some in her lap, some pressed against her sides, all of them smiling or purring. Elena was smiling too, despite her obvious exhaustion and the medical equipment still attached to her. This is what humanity brings to the galaxy, Dr. Kesseth said quietly. Not just their endurance or their technology or their combat skills. This, the ability to look at a stranger's child and see their own. The willingness to suffer so others won't have to. The strength to be weak for the right reasons. Ambassador Trellix nodded slowly. I came here prepared to thank Sergeant Reyes and file the appropriate commendations. But I'm leaving with a different mission. She looked around the room. The Velkari government has authorized me to make a formal request to the Human Diplomatic Corps. We would like to station human guards on all of our colony ships. Not because humans are the best warriors, though they are formidable, but because if disaster strikes, I want humans there. I want someone who will protect our cubs the way Sergeant Reyes protected these 12. You want humans because we're stupid enough to starve ourselves for alien kids? Elena asked with a slight smile. No, the ambassador said seriously. We want humans because you're wise enough to know that some things matter more than survival. You're brave enough to act on that wisdom, and you're strong enough to pay the price it demands.